998. That is all I'm going to say. And if you saw the last video, that is all I need to say. But you have to admit that lately your boy has been batting 1,000 with these theories, especially with Castros becoming the demigod of rebirth as well as death being proven by certain information that's been circulating recently. Rather unavoidable information. All the while, more proof has been heaped on top of the ever-growing pile of evidence pointing towards the Amphoreus doesn't exist theory. So as things look better for me, things keep looking worse for literally every other character. And to be honest, I haven't finished the story yet, but I've seen a ton of unavoidable spoilers that have shown me enough. But on a different note, Hoyo seems to be making just about every single Flamechaser we know in the Amphoreus story an XP of the ones we know from Honkai Impact 3rd. I touched on this a bit in my Flamechasers Explained video, but I didn't have as much info as I do now. So I think it's time that we revisit this and talk about the updates we've received. Because now, these aren't really guesses anymore, we kinda just know. Because this is the Flamechasers' true identities revealed. Okay, so let's go through these guys in order, starting from the GOAT himself, Kevin Kaslana, who we now know as Finan. And just like Finan, Kevin's power or signet was called Deliverance. And he was the second strongest of all of the Flamechasers. In his younger years and other iterations, his weapon was a bat, which is why Finan did this little bat flick when we first met him. Hoyo being subtle as a brick as always. And contrary to what people commonly know, just like Finan, Kevin was a very happy-go-lucky and confident guy. It was just the intense loneliness and hopelessness being forced upon him that turned him into the person we saw in Honkai Impact 3rd. Because, you see, before the Honkai wiped literally everything out, Kevin married a woman named Dr. May, and the two loved each other. A lot. Like, a lot. But as the Honkai attacked and grew worse and worse, humanity was driven into desperation for powerful warriors capable of defeating the apocalyptic threat. So Dr. May and other scientists started the Mantis Project, which stands for Massively Augmented Neo-Tech Integrated Soldiers. And just like the name suggests, this project was pretty much centered around fusing people with powerful Honkai beasts, which very often killed the person. But Kevin, along with the 13 others, survived, and the flame chase was born from the very few success stories. But as you've probably guessed, this power comes at a price, and all the surviving Mantis soldiers came with a side effect. Kevin's was his body temperature being literally sub-zero, which on the bright side allowed him to use the full power of this flaming sword called the Judgment of Shamash. But on the tragic side, he could no longer so much as lay a finger on his wife. He was so cold that he risked harming anyone that came in contact with him, which was some pretty wicked foreshadowing because after Dr. May died and the Flame Chasers were defeated, Kevin survived, but he went cold. Because, you see, his wife was the only thing that really kept him tethered to the world, so when she was gone, all that was left was the child she left him and the mission. Defeat the Honkai, the faceless, ever-spreading force that seeks only destruction, very much like the Black Tide. So just as Finan is foreshadowed to be standing alone with the pressure of the world on his back, apart from outright calling him Kevin, what more could Hoyo really do to show us that this is him? But Kevin wasn't the true leader of the Flame Chasers, no. He was the leader only in name, because the real leader was none other than Elysia. And oh boy, where do we start with Miss Pink Elf here? She is the most special of all of the Flame Chasers, and she is by far the most popular, and for good reason. The Elysian realm was literally made for and partially by her. She is most notable for her ever positive attitude and uncanny ability to love everyone and for absolutely no one to be able to hate her. Elysia's personality, I can only think to describe it as disarming, where even the most unhinged people are at least pacified by her charm. She is also known for calling things romantic, which is why Cyrene sang this.
Of course, this will be a romantic story like none that has come before. You think so too, right?
Is very telling. We also know that she's probably mem because of this.
Hi.
This woman speaks in audible tildes, I swear. But do not let her gentle and kind disposition fool you. She was the strongest of the 13 and was the sole reason why the Flamechasers did in fact defeat the Hersher of Corruption. And that was by becoming a Hersher herself and also sacrificing herself, forcing all future Hershers to at least remain mostly human, which gave humanity the greatest fighting chance they could possibly have. Because, you see, Elysia's signet was ego, and this was her gift to the future of humanity. It was her sacrifice that made Kiana, Mei, Bronya, and even Welt Yang who they are today. Because forcing a Hersher to exist in tandem with the host's ego gives the host a fighting chance to defeat the Honkai and turn the power on its head. So, the entire reason why the Hershers we see in Honkai Impact 3rd are still human is because of Elysia. Which leads me to think that Cyrene being already dead means that she sacrificed herself to give us a fighting chance against the Black Tide. But that's all we really know about her, so let's move on. Next up, being ranked 3rd among the Flamechasers is Aponia, who I believe is Aglaia. Aponia's Mantis ability granted her terrifying telepathic, future sight, and even mind control abilities. Not so different from Aglaia's golden threads, just way stronger. Now, Aponia was a genuinely kind and gentle person who always wanted the best for people, but it just so happens that sometimes the best she wanted wasn't really the best. She once predicted Raiden Mei to die, and Mei had to go to great lengths to find a way to defy her prophecy. And now that I think about it, this is so similar to how Aglaia death faked us. So these two share way more than similar dead-looking eyes that gaze into your soul. So much so that the Titan Aglaia worships Nestia at some point turned herself into a butterfly with golden patterns, which is fascinating because when you fight Aponia, you learn that her Mantis modification turned her into a butterfly, and wouldn't you know it, has golden patterns on her wings. Isn't that crazy? Oh, and her signet was disciplined, by the way. And I'm sure that there is some similarity to Aglaia hidden in there, since her intense discipline is the reason why Aglaia is losing her humanity in the first place. So she's Aponia. In the 4th spot, we have Eden, the idol Flamechaser, who is pretty much the funding of the whole Flamechaser operation. And her signet was very fittingly gold. And I'm going to say that her Star Rail counterpart is this violin woman. I don't think we know her name. And I think this for obvious reasons. Eden's character is heavily tied in with music and drinking, but mostly music. So as soon as I saw this woman holding an instrument, I can only think one thing. This is a short one because we know nothing about her, just what she looks like. So let's move on to number 5, who I mentioned in a previous video, Vill-V, bearing the signet of the Helix, whose counterpart is without a doubt Tribbies, and even though they look nothing alike, Vill-V had her personality split into many versions of herself that all took turns controlling her body, just like how Tribbios was quite literally split into at least 1,000 versions of herself. Vill-V was also the inventor of the Flamechasers, who specialized in making weapons of mass destruction, namely nuclear bombs that bears a striking resemblance to Tribbies rockets. Even the way they like to pose in front of their explosions is similar. But their mirrored aspects don't end there, because as we know, Tribbies is represented as Tribbies, Trianne, and Trinan, with Trianne being the overworked one. And this is exactly the same as how Vill-V worked, because it was the conductor, the expert, and the magician who mainly controlled her body, and it was the expert that was the one tasked with most of the work. And the funny part is that Tribbies would be the magician because she performs miracles, Trianne would be the overworked one opening portals, and Trinan would be the conductor who, well, conducts the operations by reading the prophecies. Many similarities with these two. Kicking down the door, number 6, we have Kalpis, who bears the signet of decimation. The Mad King himself, who sets himself on fire. This guy was notoriously the most unstable of the 13 and quite enjoyed harming, maiming, and even killing all that dares face him in a fight. Not much is officially said about his abilities, but his signet's power makes the player near unkillable despite giving them low HP, which has My Day written all over it. And not just because Hoyo was once again subtle as a brick, giving them the same pose, and just like Kalpis was near unkillable, so is Mighty. But just like how Mighty has a heart, so did Kalpis. Because even though he was a battle-crazed warrior, he on many occasions expressed empathy for his fallen comrades or restrained himself from attacking his allies. And while that doesn't sound like much, it is. Oh, and one more thing. Nikador also shares the title of Mad King with Kalpis, so that's another connection to Mighty. But on the polar opposite side of things, we have Su at number 7, or Anaxa, or Alhaitham. Again, I haven't played the story yet, so I don't know much about this guy, but I do know that he has heavy ties to the Reason Titan, which connects him to Su because Su was the wisest of the Flamechasers. Which is ironic because his English voice actor is wise. But that's besides the point. Besides looking very similar with a similar outfit and vibes, Anaxa seems to have a very nature-centered power, which also matches him up with Su because the signet body is represented as a leaf. But to clear things up, I got something wrong the last time I talked about this guy because there is a huge misconception around Su because of this voice line from Elysia. She says this because he often keeps his eyes shut, and this gave rise to the claim that he is blind, which he isn't. He just has psychic powers that allows him to know where things are. That does not mean that his eyes do not function or are impaired. In fact, he opens his eyes multiple times in the manga, which is hilarious because that happened to Aglaya too. There are still people that think Aglaya is blind due to badly translated leaks. It's crazy how history just repeats itself, isn't it? But let's move on. Okay, so I'm gonna be speeding through these next few because we know next to nothing about these guys. Because at number 8, 9, and 10 is Yae Sakura, Cosma, and Mobius, who I kinda gotta take a wild guess here is Hyacinth, this person in the desert, and someone we haven't met yet. And this is purely based off of aesthetics, nothing deep here. Pink hair, dark eerie vibes, and Amphoreus is shaped like an infinity sign, which is Mobius' signet because her signet was infinity. And we don't know if she's even alive or dead to this day, to be honest. Gonna have to update for these three in the future for sure. Hyacinth is obviously Barbara though, that cannot be denied. But speaking of updates, I think we can confirm that the 11th ranked Griseo Star Rail XP is Castorus, and for multiple reasons. Not only do they have very similar hairstyles with 2 long twin tails in the back, they also wear a similar looking white dress. Castorus is also a remembrance type character, which means that she will work in tandem with a Memo Sprite, which aligns well with Griseo, who relied on her summon called Mr. Knight. So the parallels line up well there. Griseo is also one of the 3 Flamechasers that are still alive today, and that would be Su in spiritual form, Griseo of course, and the Phoenix herself, bearer of the Signet of Vicissitude, my favorite Honkai Impact 3rd character, Fu Hua, whose Mantis augment gave her a body that didn't age, and after she fully mastered it, a body that can regenerate itself infinitely. And this girl standing alone on the mountain with dragon wings looks exactly like her from behind. Because not only did Fu Hua use dragon wings on 2 different occasions, but she is also the only Flamechaser who is still alive that was also entirely conscious and present for the full 50,000 year gap. So when Tribbies here says some will bury time itself, who else but Fu Hua can do that? Also, that is her hair in the majority of her battle suits, specifically the Phoenix one where she has white hair. Finally, in the 13th spot, we have the weakest of the Flamechasers, Pardofelis, bearer of the Reverie Signet, who is nearly identical to Cypher, who I somehow missed is already a demigod and has the core flame of trickery. Which makes so much sense because Pardofelis was always a scammer known for her ability to trick people. So this is why we see Cypher stealing some coins here. Also, cat girl, long tail, hood over her ears, all that, you know, she's Pardofelis, come on. Okay, so that was the Flamechasers' true identity revealed. Well, most of them. Still planning on updating this one as soon as we know all of them, so take this as a checkpoint of sorts. This might actually be my longest video yet, so thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, comment 998 if you made it this far. Those who know. Anyway, I still think it's kind of crazy that Hoyo actually made the Flamechasers twice. Honkai do be Honkai. What do you guys think? Be sure to let me know, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace, y'all.